All right, team, are you ready? It's 4 o'clock. So we'll go as long as we so choose today. Thanks for being here on this sunny Tuesday and joining us for our middle school chat. I'm going to continue to admit folks, so if you see the cursor moving around, that's why. You know myself, hopefully by now, Steve, and the fabulous Wendy, who's with us. So contact information is on the screen as usual. Obviously, you know the Google Doc that we work from, that's in the chat sketch forums. If you want to tell us topics of interest, we'll rate those or do something like we did today. If there were 3 topics and there weren't any ratings, so we thought, hey, let's try something different and go for all 3. So we have some special guests in the room today. One is Tammy Jackson, who is an MASSP team member, and the other one is Matt Alley. And Wendy's going to introduce them and get them going as we go through the process. Just as we engage with the work, keep this in mind, the smartest person in the room is the room. So we're all going through the same types of things. How do we use each other during these times to learn and grow from one another and move forward with our practices? So we're just simply going to do this, a welcome and engage, interacting and engaging, which means we're going to have a few folks from MASSP share their thoughts, either from their perspectives or the state levels. Your role is to listen and then jump in with your thinking, your thoughts, questions, whatever it might be. The first topic that we'll explore is summer school learning options. What does that look like? Even the buzz language around it, some people aren't even calling it summer school anymore. Think about what the message that you're sending, and then the transition to the middle school and high school, and then perhaps what you're planning to do for school improvement and professional learning, knowing that we have to get back on track with staff work. The process is going to look like this. MASSP team members are going to share their perspectives. They have some slides. We have some slides built in, and then 15 minutes for dialogue between everybody who's here. So in that time, Wendy will instruct you on what to do, but it's probably just me like unmute yourself, put it in the chat box, the very typical types things. So Wendy, words to the wise before we jump in with Tammy?
Well, excited to be back with everyone. Sorry I missed you last go round, but I have no doubt I left you in incredibly capable hands of Steve. So as he mentioned, we thought we'd change things up just a little bit this time and try to hit 3 topics. And so we're gonna just kind of allocate about 15 minutes for each one, but we're really looking for all of you to participate. So we're just gonna start it out, and then we really just want people to jump in and share their ideas and what they have. So before we get going, I did want to clue you in on a little secret, not so secret, but nonetheless, I see that Jason Messenger is with us today, and Jason is currently an MASSP board member. He's a principal in Portage at a middle school, and Jason is going to be MASSP's president-elect, and he's running unopposed. So super excited, 2 years in a row of middle school leadership at MASSP. Our current president-elect is Nina Davis, who's the principal at L'Anse Creuse Middle School East. And now 2 years in a row, which I don't know, I can't say it's never happened, but I'm pretty sure it's never happened, that we have 2 middle school folks in a row. So very excited. And Jason, thanks for being with us. We'll leave time at the end for you to make your little acceptance speech. Kidding. No pressure. It's all good. All right. So today, 3 topics Steve mentioned. The first one that we're going to be talking about is summer school and learning options. So this is obviously, a tough one, because I have no doubt that people are getting pretty fried. And when I say people, I think teachers, I think administrators, I think all school personnel are pretty tired. This has been a very challenging year, no doubt about that. But how many of you, raise of hands, would also say kids are pretty tired? This has been a challenging year for kids as well. So when we think about summer school, many districts and parents and educators are concerned about learning loss when it comes to students. And so the state is really thinking we have to be investigating and thinking about how do we help students to make some gains, close some gaps before they go into next school year. And for some, especially obviously at the high school level, being able to get the credits they need to be able to move on to the next grade level. So that's going to be kind of our focus. Hopefully you see the updates that MASSP's Bob Kefchin puts out. Bob, in his recent budget update, provided information that $90 million is being allocated for up to a $550 per pupil reimbursement in person for K-8 summer school programs. There's also an additional $1,000 per pupil possible if a program is designed as innovative. Not sure exactly what that means to qualify. Other thing that we want to be mindful of is that there is also a $21 million allocation for incentive payments of $1,000 for teachers and $250 for support staff who work at summer credit recovery or before and after school programs. So those are kind of some added incentives for those of you that are considering summer programs. So if you have thought about that or haven't thought about that, we really want to be able to kind of generate some good ideas for you today. Some of you might be thinking, what do we do if we want to try an online program? Tammy Jackson, who Steve mentioned, works for MASSP. She also has a connection with Michigan Virtual. And so I asked her to be able to just provide us with what are online options that Michigan Virtual has. And personally, you know, as somebody who's been in education a long time, I've always thought that the Michigan Virtual online courses were a little bit better than some of the different online providers in terms of substance. And they also tend to offer some things that maybe are a little bit more creative. So we have Tammy with us to talk about that. I also wanted Matt to jump in because he's the director of our student programs at MASSP. I just wanted to have Matt share with you some things that he's done in the past couple of summers with middle school leaders. So we'll start with that. And then after Tammy and Matt have shared a little bit, I'd love to have you share what is your district planning for summer school? Has this discussion already started within your district? So Steve is going to start the clock at 15 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. I'm happy to be here. It's really a timely conversation. I have been engaging with high school principals around this very topic for the last couple of weeks, as we've been waiting to see what's going to come down as far as funding to help with summer school. And of course, as we have reflected on MASSP's recent survey that said 90% of the schools who responded to the survey said that they had significant more failure first semester than they have had in the past. And I know that failure looks a little bit different at the middle school level, but certainly that would be reflective, I'm sure, of what's going on at the middle school level as well. And so as we think about how we're going to close those gaps, we looked for opportunities to do that. And often we try and do the same thing we've always done, but the problem with that is you're going to get the same results. And if you just deliver what you've been delivering all year to students in a different calendar, you're likely not to have as much success. And so you may want to consider some alternative ways to remediate your students. So Michigan Virtual offers at the middle school level an opportunity for summer school. And that opportunity is they have classes for grade levels 6 through 8 in all of the core areas. Those classes are aligned to Michigan standards. And those classes include 2 semester classes. So it would be science, 6th grade A and B, science, you know, and so forth for science, math, language arts, social studies. And they have electives as well, as you can see in the area of Spanish, German, French, leadership, and tar. I don't really know where that came from, but that is on their catalog. So when you look at the opportunity for summer learning, you're not just talking about remediation and closing gaps for the core areas, but you might be looking at offering some things to students to actually expand their learning or just keep them engaged in learning. And that would be maybe in the areas of the foreign languages. So go ahead, Steve. So they offer a flexible calendar in that they have 6 different start dates that a school could jump into. So they've got summer program is 10, the classes are 10 weeks long, and there's 6 different times that you could start with their programs. So their programs are online, asynchronous, but they come with a highly qualified instructor. And so I know that we're really unsure exactly what the new funding is, what it means when they say in person. Just keep in mind that in-person learning doesn't mean it can't be digital learning. It doesn't mean it can't include some form of a platform that delivers the instruction. So while your teachers may be involved, maybe they're more involved in helping to mentor the students versus delivering the instruction. Somebody else delivers the instruction, they're there to help and support students. Okay, Steve. Also, back one more if you would. Oh, or this one, you're right, I'm sorry. So one other thing that they offer at the middle school level for English in grades 8 and 9 and for math up to grade 6 is their eReady program or their EdReady program. So they have EdReady classes in English and math. And what happens with those programs is they give a diagnostic test to students and they prescribe for them what they need to close their learning gaps. This is a program that's been in existence for a long time, but it's a great program that you might want to consider rolling out to your entire school population. If you let parents know that they can access this at very low cost or no cost to parents. Steve? So just quickly, the EdReady provides you with a dashboard so you can keep track of what students are doing. So you can use it for remediation because you can monitor it. And there's all kinds of information that you can get about this. And I don't have the time to go into the details, but just please know that it would be wise of you to explore what Michigan Virtual offers in the EdReady English and Math, as well as summer school offers. And this final slide here is some contacts that you might want to use as you reach out to people about it. And honestly, if you just Google Michigan Virtual, if you just go to their page, you're going to get all this information that I gave you today. And of course, contact me at any time and I'll be happy to support you. So knowing that, is anybody out there far along in their plans for summer learning and might want to add what they're doing in their building this year or this summer, what they're planning?
I don't mind.
Hey, Lynn.
In Radford Union, we have actually started planning for middle school. We only have one middle school in the district, but our plan is we use Imagine, which is very similar to EdReady. So we are going to have a component with Imagine taking care of the reading and math, but we're going to also have hands-on core classes. So your science, your social studies, your ELA, we're going to make it hands-on, but we're going to also try to integrate some electives in so that the whole day is just not about academics, but they'll get a chance to go out on the field and do some different things too, even if it's just foreign language, studying out by the track, which is next door to the school. Just trying to do anything to entice the kids to come while actually working on it, closing the achievement gap. So we'll have it finalized by the end of this month.
Hey, Lynn, can I just ask you a couple of questions? So
Yes.
are you planning on doing this? What grade levels are in your building?
So we have 6 through 8, and yes, I'll probably be the one to organize it and lead it.
So do you have any, I mean, have you surveyed families? Do you have any idea of interest?
So the survey is going out this week, and we're hoping if we integrate things like the PE and things like that, we can get some of the kids. We're thinking that maybe 20% of the kids may sign up. They've already been asking, and we just had a parent meeting the other night, and the parents were asking too. So we'll be happy to get 100, and try to create something nice.
Have you offered this in the past?
Yeah, but I was in a 2 through 5 building. So the summer STEAM program was what we used. And we always had about 120 kids that came in the summer. But this was prior to COVID, of course. So every summer we would get about 120 to 130.
Is there going to be any cost to the families?
There was nothing. But we did have a field trip every week. So we just asked the parents to contribute $10. And that covered all the field trips. And I just made sure I found field trips that were free. And then the $10 went towards like field day snacks and, different things like that.
Fantastic. So have you already had like conversation in your district about this allocation that might come with it? Is that going to change anything that you do?
So we were told to try to put together, the bare bones, some type of outline, and then we meet every Thursday. So I'll have that to bring Thursday to our meeting that we have every week with the administrators and the superintendent. So hopefully I know that there will be enough money allocated to cover summer school, but the superintendent wants us to already start thinking of it. And I guess there's money, to be used. So I'm hoping that whatever I put together is going to integrate, not just trying to close the gap, but also trying to make sure we get a nice amount of people for the money will be allocated.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Okay. Who else might be able to share? I know Lynn's information is on the form. So if you have a question, I'm sure that she'd be more than happy to help you with that. Who else has a summer school idea?
And just to jump in real quick while we chew on that, I know we've had about 5 or 6 people join in. Tammy, if you want to drop your question into the chat for people to review, just so they're up to speed on what we're talking about, while we start to think about the answer to that question, I'll jump in and share a little bit for programming that as an association we've offered for the past 5 years to really target and work with middle school students. So over the summer, in a traditional year, we run a series of half-day and one-day workshops called Summer Leadership Seminars. And I'll share a link in the chat. We took the page down because we're currently redesigning it to format it to the virtual world. But essentially, when we talk about working with middle school students, these programs are very customizable. So what we have, I just shared it in the chat, is an event that we work and build out with advisors and with administrators to focus on your needs. So it is a leadership training. That's our wheelhouse. That's what we do. I forgot to introduce myself, Matt Alley. I'm Director of Student Services with MASSP. So all we do is work with thousands and thousands of kids across the state. So the really cool thing about these customizable leadership workshops is we really want to build in some of these fundamental building blocks. It's a lot of goal setting, a lot of communication. We're developing student programs. We want them to really recognize how to work with one another, how to build healthy relationships. Since the start of the new year, we've done a ton of work with Franklin Covey, the makers of the 7 highly effective habits of teens. We've taken a lot of their curriculum packets and really helped shape them to deliver those items in a virtual world. So that program, the Franklin Covey, will be an active part of our summer program. And we're hoping to have more information to release to members here in the next month or so about what that would look like and how we can get more kids involved. But I did want to share, if you're looking for more content that's not necessarily your math, your science, your history curriculum, but life skills curriculum, something that all of our kids need, and building out those connections, whether you've been hybrid or remote this whole time, getting kids to work with one another. We'd be happy to work with any school that might be interested in getting kids some resources and some skill sets that they might not be getting on a day-to-day basis.
So Matt, I know that the term soft skills is kind of like become a pretty significant buzz term that people are using. But I mean, when we're talking about the type of leadership training, I think what I see is that after the students have gone through this, they feel like student voice is present in the school because they're having an opportunity to actually run events and, lead their peers and, really kind of take ownership in their school.
Yeah, and I would completely agree. One of the things that we try to instill in our students is the fact that they do have power in their schools. And we try to work with educators to let them know that the largest resource they have to make gains in their school culture and the school environment is the kids. So the more training we can get to the kids to take some of these programs, to take some of the burden off of our teachers who are constantly hit with, some of those extras and leading programs and leading extracurriculars, the more we can train our students to handle some of that, we're really benefiting the entire culture. We're benefiting the educators, and obviously we're giving the students skills that they can then build on from those foundational leadership standards.
Awesome. Great job. Okay. Anyone else before we leave this topic? We'd love to hear what your plans are for summer learning. If your district has a plan, it would be great if you could just share a little information about it, even if it's something that just a continuation of what you've always done.
I can share a second. We don't have a solid plan yet. We're just talking about it, but we have a 21st Century Learning Centers grant that we've had for, I think we're going on our 3rd session, so 11 or 12 years. And it provides after school programming and summer school. And even though, it's called summer school, but it is highly engaging, a lot of fun. They do tons of team building, enrichment kinds of activities. And so kids love it and they love to come. Parents love to have them come, but it's not very academic. So we are going to partner with them to still get the kids excited about coming, but then also get some actual content in there as well.
That sounds like a great mix. Something that they already love to do, and then layering in some of those academic skills. So, has that been a full day program? Is it 5 days a week? And what grade levels have you been targeting?
We usually, so my building is 6-8, and we normally invite 5th graders because it gets them into the middle school a little bit, so they kind of get used to it. They meet some of our staff through that program. So it's usually 5th, 6th, 7th graders. We offer it to 8th graders. We just don't have very many 8th graders who take us up on it, you can imagine. And I think, off the top of my head, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 days a week, but it is only a half day. We bring them in, feed them breakfast. They do the program. We feed them lunch and take them home. Transportation has been the biggest issue. It's expensive.
That sounds, I mean, to me, like a pretty ideal situation. I think that's probably about the right amount of time for the kids. And, that sounds like a really good plan. So thanks so much for sharing that, Tanya. Anyone else?
We have about 3 more minutes, so keep going.
Looks like most people were hoping to learn ideas today rather than share ideas on this topic anyway. So just keep in mind what I shared at the beginning, that there is a pretty significant allocation in the budget that's going to be made available for summer learning, especially at the K-8 level, and also funding that's available for incentives to pay teachers and support staff to be able to facilitate this. So might be a good opportunity if it's something that you haven't done in the past. To help negate some of that, potential slide that occurred during COVID-19.
It also makes me think, Wendy and everybody else, of how can we rewrite the formula for summer school? So what have we always wanted to do with summer school now that we have a little extra money and a little extra perhaps time and some new technology that lives in front of us, to rewrite the ways that we've always done summer school? I think it's imperative, like Tanya just brought up, to get 5th grade into 6th grade, or whatever entry grade is into the middle school, up so that they become acclimated with the staff and the culture of the building so that they feel comfortable coming in. So how do you put all those things into play and have almost a brainstorming session, perhaps even with the students, around what would they appreciate during summer school? Because I know as a learner, I probably would have been in summer school. While all my friends were having fun, I would have been in summer school, which makes me think my voice would have been really important, which Matt was talking about, is how do you create leadership with those students to say, what would you appreciate, and make them want to come? So just some things to throw out at you.
I also
Lisa commented that she said that, she was believing that they will struggle to get teachers to teach summer school. And that's what I'm hearing at the high school level as well, is that teachers need a break, and they're just simply saying, I have to push away. And that's when you're going to have to look for other options, alternative options to the traditional summer learning with a student in front of the teacher delivering the instruction.
For sure.
So as we go into our next topic, then it's transitions into the middle school and transitions into the high school, or out of the middle school into the high school. So if we want to start off with some thinking from Team MASSP, once they're done, we'll set the timer for 15 minutes and we'll go to it.
Yeah, so topic number 2, and clearly must be the most important topic of today because I was asked to introduce it. But again, it's one that might take some creative development on your school's, depending on your school's current instructional model and kind of your plans for the spring, and that's middle school transition. So for this set, we're looking at both transitioning into and out of your building. So the idea that I wanted to kick off actually came from a colleague of mine down in Georgia from a career tech center. And the reason I want to discuss is because I think it works out well, regardless of the instructional model that you're in. So basically, what this tech center was trying to do to help, promote their services, promote their programs, knowing that all of their kids were currently, we went to remote in the spring. They're trying to generate positive buzz for all of their programs. So they ran a virtual open house, which I thought was pretty neat. So what they ended up doing is they built out a basic web page that housed all of their program information with living Zoom links, and then hosted a virtual open house for students to join and check out their programs. And I went through, and I'll share my screen really quickly. I went through and went on my website and I built one out very, very quickly to give you kind of an idea of this overall concept and what it could look like. If it'll load here for me. All right, basic question. Can you see my screen? Thumbs up. Okay. So for this approach, what you can see that I've tried to do here, is it showing the 6th grade open house? Is it that screen that's on?
No, it's showing welcome class of 2027.
Yeah, that's the one. All right, sorry, I got it pulled up now. Virtual learning is fun. Okay, so essentially what might work, what might be a really slick idea, depending again on your plans to welcome in new students. If you have to do it in the virtual realm, building out a web page to host all of your Zoom meetings is a very easy workaround, so you don't have to get involved in hosting a digital conference platform, which can be quite expensive. It can be kind of tedious work. I think this took me about 15 minutes to code in on the back end. And this very quick welcome agenda, what you can then build out are these different Zoom meetings for your parents and for your students to attend. So I very quickly made a welcome and a building tour that can pre-recorded that we can throw on there. You can have live Zoom meetings and run concurrent sets that students and families would then be able to join. Some of the stuff they might be apprehensive about, your virtual academy, getting to learn your SIS system or how does scheduling work. We threw in one for extracurriculars, so you could have all of your clubs, your student government, National Junior Honor Society. You could have your advisors lead 15-minute overviews of what these programs look like. Knowing that we're all pretty comfortable now with these digital tools, it makes a lot of sense to me to use them to our advantage and try to look for easy wins. So even if you do plan on getting students into your building for a traditional open house, this is always something that you could set up, you could pre-record, and you could have living for students if they're transferring into your building. You get new enrollments if they want to check out your school. It's great promotion. It's a great way for kids to meet your staff, even if it doesn't have to, even if you don't want to run it live. So I thought this idea works out pretty well from both getting in front of your students to working them through some of their anxieties and fears to building that rapport with parents. And again, it can be something that you want to promote and do it in a live session where you're getting kids to drop into these rooms for 15-minute increments and move it through a 1-hour program. Or you could pre-record all these sets with your staff and get them up online for the parents to watch at any time. So what the ask is for this question, when we look at the transitionings, both students transitioning into your building, students transitioning out of your building, what items is your school currently working on that might be creative, that might be a little bit different than the norm? And then what are some of the traditional items that you still plan on running this year? And maybe some of the logistics behind it so we can all get a better sense and feel for what adaptations you've made as an administrative staff to help your students both in and out of your building.
I'd like to share. So I'm from Clawson Middle School. I'm the dean of students there. And traditionally we do like an open house where the 5th graders come in and our National Junior Honor Society students guide them around in a schedule to show them the building and acclimate them there. Clearly that's not going to be perfectly run this time. So we implored our high school video class, and they're actually going to do the exact same thing they would have done, but they're going to video the National Junior Honor Society kids doing the exact same thing they would do if the 5th graders were coming in for orientation. And so that it is live and they can watch it. And then after that, they're going to have a student panel that's going to allow for students to be able to have some questions. So it provides them kind of a digital media tour. And then we'll also provide them a place where they can ask questions. So our high school kids are also getting involved, which is cool for our middle school leaders to be able to work with them to create the script and do those kinds of things. So
that's awesome. So Jennifer, what I'm sure that you have some type of meeting that usually involves the parents as well. So what are you doing to are you thinking that's going to be virtual, or are you going to have an opportunity for parents to visit the building?
Definitely not in the building, but they'll still have that video that they'll be able to see from, the voice of a middle schooler currently. Our counselor is spearheading it, and she's actually going down to the 5th grade classrooms to see them one-on-one and be able to ask some questions there. We haven't ironed out all the details yet, so that might look like a Google Meet for us. That's been pretty successful in our district, just being smaller. But they haven't ironed that out perfectly yet. We started with the kids and what the kids might appreciate. Not that the parents don't matter, but we wanted to make it interesting and welcoming for the 5th graders. So more to come, I guess I can say in that way, for how we'll have the parents be involved.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Who else has a plan?
Well, I
Julie?
can share. I don't know that I'm looking to steal ideas to make it even better. So pile on if you would. But we invite our 6th graders in typically in the fall. And last year we did manage to still do it. We had to break it apart into 2 days. So we had much smaller groups. And we have teams. And so our teams of teachers ran mini schedules with very small groups of kids so that the kids could actually walk through what their schedule for the day looks like, meet every teacher that's on their schedule. And then we did things like lockers, because that's the first time our kids have lockers. And it's the scariest thing about middle school by far is, how do I get that darn locker open? And how many times do I turn it before it'll actually click on the number? And do a scavenger hunt around the building so the kids can find things and get to know where everything is located. And then we run meals through the lunch line, which they're thrilled about. They just haven't eaten enough cafeteria food to know that it's not that exciting. But so we try to give them a mini version of their day. And it was pretty tricky last year, but we did break it apart into a couple different days and get the group smaller so that we could still give them that. So we're still looking for ways this fall to make sure they get that in-person experience. We thought that was super important for them.
So Julie, just to clarify, that's something that you do in the fall. That's not something you do over the summer?
No, so we typically do that the week before our open house so that the kids can get in the building multiple times to see their teachers and their lockers. In the spring, our counselors go to the 5th classrooms and meet the kids and talk about scheduling. And we did a virtual tour last year because our kids were not in school at the end of the year. And we're thinking for space purposes, we'll probably have to do a virtual tour this spring, but we're still hoping to do the in-person transition day in the fall.
Fantastic. I'm trying to type and and facilitate at the same time, but that's awesome. Okay. Who else has an idea for transition? And if it's not something that's going on at your building, if your 8th graders would typically be going to the high school, has there been a change in that programming?
Can I share?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tasia Stamos, and actually for our 6th graders coming in this year, instead of having an in-person parent night like we usually do, we held it over Zoom. Our counselor was there, and our band director and our choir director, and they were all able to give presentations on their courses. And all of this was done in advance of the kids' parents receiving Google form, so where they could select their courses, either our STEM electives or band or choir. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to deal with our 6th graders this spring, because we always bring them in for lunch and for a tour, and they have a panel that they meet with. But I like some of the ideas that are being shared, and we might be able to incorporate something so we can work that out. Last year, we always do a meet in the middle in August, 2 weeks before school starts, to get our kids acclimated. We're hoping we can do some version of that this year in the building, but last year we actually held the event outside, and that's where the kids came and got their Chromebooks and their schedules and got to meet their teachers. But unfortunately, because we started the year remotely, they weren't able to get a tour at that time. We had to do it by individual classrooms once we came back face-to-face with our hybrid model.
I like that meet in the middle concept in August. So would that be all grade levels? Is that on a specific day and time?
It's just for our sixth graders coming in, and we always do it on a Wednesday, and it's from 4 to 7 p.m. It's a drop-in, and the kids can actually get their pictures taken and get to meet some of their teachers who volunteer at the event. And our robotics program is set up, and our athletic director is there to meet with parents. So there's different stations that they rotate through. So yeah, it works out really nicely. And that's where the band students get their instruments that night and everything. So it's a good event. And we usually have like almost 100% participation.
That was going to be my question. That's awesome. Really. Yeah. And I'm sorry, where are you from?
I'm from Plainwell Middle School.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yep.
Okay, who else might have something to add to that?
So my name is Tracy Stevenson. I'm the assistant principal at Clarenceville High School. And I know this is for middle school, but I'm doing secondary summer school programs, so middle school and high school. So what I was thinking about for the transition, I've done it before at Huron High School in Ann Arbor because I was a ninth grade dean. We did like a week of summer planning for the student freshmen, so like a freshman camp where they would meet their teachers, where they would interact with each other, do some team building. And at the same time, what I would like to do this year is to get our 11th graders to be their big brothers and big sisters so they can be with them for at least 2 years. So that's the goal. And then, some kind of fun activity at the end of the week where they can see their teachers and staff having fun with them. In the past, when I was at a charter school, we went to Lucky Strike. But this year I'm thinking like some outdoor activities like the battle of the, I don't know, like you do the battles with students. So like you might have the teachers against the students in like a tug of war, a three-legged race, some fun activities where it could be outdoors. So maybe we can not have so much COVID spread. Yeah, there we go. So, we'll see what happens, but those are some ideas and we're in the planning stages right now.
So Tracy, when you say a camp, are you thinking it would be a shorter duration, like maybe just a week type thing, or
a week long? So like, one day you meet with your teachers, you find out what is expected. So like, what books are we reading first semester in English class? What kind of math are we going to be doing? Things like that. So we can get an idea of where they are. It would be nice to even be able to get maybe some pre-testing in to see where they are. Before they come in. So I was even thinking like maybe using that Ed Ready that Tammy was talking about to see where they are with their English and math skills, just to be able to make sure that we're able to service them appropriately when they come back in the fall.
That's awesome. So I'm sorry, one more thing with you. Did you say you've done this before or this is going to be a new thing?
I've done some of this in other districts pre-COVID. So like I did it at a charter school for a week and it was great. They had to build like a wedding dress using toilet paper. So it was quite interesting. Just the team building that you're doing. We did the scavenger hunt that someone else mentioned. So I'm just thinking about those kind of activities, but then I have to start thinking like, what about those students that can't be here? How can we incorporate it where they could be a part of it as well because their parents are not comfortable with them being in the building? So that would be another, something creative to have to think about.
Awesome. One of the things that I think a lot of people have mentioned is that, you can do an in-person event. You just might have to be keeping your numbers smaller. And, especially when you're talking about a transition, having numbers smaller might not be such a bad thing. The other thing is obviously, it's a little bit of a gamble thinking about weather, but being able to just have kids outside, for a portion of that, and certainly when they're eating, that can all be really beneficial. But it seems to me like one of the key components, whether we're talking about summer learning or we're talking about transition, is finding ways to integrate that fun part. It's definitely, got to be part of the program, is trying to find out ways to make it so that kids can be engaged with it and it's not a punishment or something. And I think the other thing that, whether we're talking about summer school or whether we're talking about transition, is how do we make it student-led? How do we make it student-driven? How do we incorporate student voice into this? Serving the kids, having kids involved in the planning process can really make a huge difference with that. And, Throughout this whole pandemic, MASSP has had a number of webinars just, really trying to incorporate student voice. And it's amazing. Like if you ever just need ideas or creative thoughts about how to set up something or, what should we do or what should this look like? Just ask kids, and I really think that would be a great source of ideas for you as well.
It makes me think, as you say that, Wendy, too, is even as an administrator, I remember when I was playing in the middle school of having the students from 6th grade coming in mid-year and just having conversations with them around lunch, around what did you appreciate? What didn't you appreciate? What were you scared of? So that we knew the current trends, because my old mind thought I was pretty trendy, but what I realized after a little while is I wasn't that cool anymore. And I lost contact. Like I knew the lockers and things like that, but the underpinning things. The other thing that, like Tracy, you were just talking about, is I wonder how we access their 5th grade PE teachers so that they could be part of the planning for some of those field days. Because I can think back, and probably what I would appreciate after you just said that is some normalcy or some familiarity, especially if I was a student who was a bit awkward, that I might have a teacher that I connected with from my elementary that perhaps was part of my middle school transition as well. And I wonder how we incorporate some of those things, but of course, getting the feedback from students as we move forward. We're on our final topic, folks, and it's PD, school improvement for 2021-22. We are not MyKIP experts in this room. So if you have MyKIP things, we can probably give you some references on who to call around those, but your ISD person would be your local contact for that. But what are you doing for school improvement? Because we did some surveying, and Wendy will probably speak to this. We'll just open it up until like 10:55 instead of starting the timer. But Wendy and Bob Kefchin are lobbyist with the organization, had some conversations with leaders around what are some areas that they might want to explore going into next year. And some of those were PD options and other things. So Wendy, you want to get us kicked off with this one?
So if we're thinking about, professional development and things that you're going to want to do for next year, one of the key components that I think you need to be thinking about for your teaching staff is realizing that even if all of us are vaccinated going into next school year, when I say all of us, I mean the adults, right? The best thing that I've seen in terms of information about student vaccinations is we may see high school students vaccinated sometime in the first half of the school year next year. There's obviously a lot of testing going on with younger students to see, how is that going to work before we even start talking about younger students. So when we're thinking about that and the potential of, disruption next school year, knowing even that if, let's just say we were so fortunate and all, age groups were able to be vaccinated, we are going to have a percentage of families that probably opt out. We'll have a percentage of teachers that opt out. So COVID is going to be present to some degree in our society as we're thinking about this. So when we think about school improvement and we think about professional development next year, I don't think we can consider any of that without realizing that the virtual presence in our lives is going to need to be there. So what is that going to be looking like? What are some of the things that teachers have done really well this year in an online format? And what are things that still need to be shored up over the summer? And when you go into next year, you're probably going to need to still continue to access curriculum and provide instruction in an online format. What's that going to look like for you next year? What are things that you need to do and shore up in your professional development time? And then, of course, as we start thinking forward about setting goals for next year in terms of, school improvement planning, and we start thinking about things like our math goals, our reading goals, even our culture and climate goals, what achievement gaps are we going to be looking at? And what data points are we going to pull? At this point in time, it looks like we're still going to be giving MSTEP this year. I think most of us would acknowledge that MSTEP does not give us the data that really is diagnostic in terms of steps moving forward. So what other data are you using? Do you have benchmark assessments in place that will really help you to be able to determine Students who, although they might be passing from 5th grade into 6th grade next year, or from 6th grade into 7th grade, but you know they have some gaps that you're going to need to remediate. How are you going to assess those gaps, and what are you going to do to be able to keep them progressing through the curriculum while you're also remediating some of those deficiencies? Doesn't that just make you excited about next year? I mean, for me, I'm just talking to you about it gets my heart beating, because I think about, you know, the fact that this is a very real problem, and regardless of what grade level we're talking about. And that's why we kind of kicked off with this discussion thinking about summer school, because obviously if we could address some of those gaps and some of those deficiencies over the course of the summer, the better off we would be. So this is kind of like our big picture that we wanted to start talking to you about now, knowing that you're going to have, you know, a pretty tall task in the fall. So anybody already started thinking about whether it's how you're going to measure those gaps, or about professional development that you're thinking about for this coming school year?
So I'm Dr. Mary Jenkins Williams, Franklin Middle School, Wayne Westland Community School District. And we've started talking about professional development regarding cultural competencies and culturally relevant teaching. Because we know that representation matters, and that our students need to see people in positions of success that look like them, and that the curriculum should also encompass our students' different cultures and lifestyles, beliefs, traditions, values. And so we've reached out to Wayne Risa to do some training with our staff around the cultural competency so that we can have some courageous conversations and try to close the achievement gap with our students of color in particular, because it is growing. And we know the pandemic has kind of highlighted the inequities within the educational system for students of color. And so that's where our focus will be this summer.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, Mary, and that really does fall in with the new MyKit model, because, you know, you're not only measuring, you know, just overall student academic performance, but really being held accountable to looking at those achievement gaps that you have within your system, but also, you know, culture and climate surveys. And, you know, I think about, you know, some of the initiatives that I've seen coming out of MDE recently, where they, you know, introduced the African-American literature pieces, where it's trying to get people to think about what may be causing some kids to not be interested in reading is that they don't see it reflected in themselves. Exactly. And that the more they can access books, or, you know, even I've been really impressed this year more than ever before with what I see online in terms of even celebrating and honoring Black History Month, rather than just maybe focusing on people that students have never heard of. It's been an emphasis on more like relevant recent leaders and, you know, celebrations of success within the African-American community that I think are more approachable to students. So I think that there's a lot of ways to try to do that. And I think that that's like a great focus and something that, you know, I think one of the things, and I don't know if you've heard this in different districts you've worked in, Mary, but you know, I've tended to work in districts where we don't have a significant African-American population. And so sometimes when you have a smaller population, the staff might say, oh, that's not an issue here. We don't have a lot of diversity. And to me, that drives me crazy, because it's like, that's exactly why you need it.
Right.
Because you don't have the diversity is exactly why you need it even more, you know? So I think that it's an important piece, regardless of your percentage of students who are, you know, from different backgrounds. It's just so needed. So I appreciate you sharing that. And if you have any specific resources that you're going to be using, or things that you would share with people, I did just start in the notes and I put your name. So if you want to feel free to add any links to resources that you have, I think that would be great. Also good to know that Wayne Risa is a good resource as well. Anyone else have something to share? How about technology planning and thinking about your platform for next year? Anyone have any thoughts about getting teachers, feeling more confident with teaching in an online format? Anything that you're doing in terms of that type of format? Anybody now thinking that's what maybe they should be doing? We're talking about it. I do think that there's a percentage of people that are like, man, I hope this goes away and we're just going to come back to school and it's going to be like it was 2 years ago. And I think that's one of the things that we really have to think about is it's not going to be like it was 2 years ago ever again. And so how do we find the silver linings of what has been happening and leverage those to move forward? And to keep finding ways, because the other thing I think we also have to realize is there is going to be a percentage of your student population that decided this remote thing was good for them. And they may not come back ever. Or they don't come back this year, they come back 2 years from now, whatever that might look like. So that's another thing that I think districts are going to have to continue to think about is if we aren't really happy with the results we saw, kind of took maybe a Band-Aid approach to online learning. What are we going to do moving forward if, let's just say, 25% of your kids stayed virtual forever? What would you do? I think that's another kind of thing that we need to start thinking about.
Wendy, so one of the things that I've heard schools are contemplating doing is building an online course into every student's schedule. Whether it be a time of day or just, within your day, however schools want to make that work, but just so that they can have students in an online platform with more direction from a teacher that's present to sort of help them be better at being online students so that in the future, should we have to go back to that, or maybe in their college when they move on to the next level, they're more prepared for that. So, I think that just letting go of online learning because we're going to go back to normal would be a tragedy completely.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Tam. But one of the things I think about is when we talk about this is it's not just for the students, but for the kids. Think about, if your teachers who have been delivering instruction, posting assignments, doing all of those things, if they stopped doing that and just went back full face-to-face, weren't posting assignments anymore, how quick do you think they'd forget how to do all those things? And how many of you think that next year we're going to have a snow day or some disruption where kids can't come to the building, right? So I think one of the things that I saw some schools do that I think was really smart was they had virtual days built into their calendar. So, once a month or once every 2 or 3 weeks, you actually have planned that kids are going to, be at home and be learning virtually. I think that's a really smart move too, because it keeps everybody in the practice, kids taking their technology home, teachers taking their technology home and being ready to deliver when they need to. So I think these are all just those kinds of things that we can't lose sight of, that if we have kids and teachers on a platform, we have to keep that next year. We can't just let that go, or 6 months later, if we have to access it, everyone's going to forget what they had been doing. It's just, human nature. I mean, heck, how many of you forget your password if you haven't logged into something in a couple of weeks, right? So, I mean, it has the potential to be a pretty significant slide for our adult learners as well as for our students.
It also
Anyone else have anything? Go ahead, Steve.
When you're talking about this, Wendy, it reminds me as well of when we're planning for PD, what's our vision or our ultimate outcome? And then from there, what do students need? What do teachers need? And perhaps sometimes what do I as an administrator need? And what might the community need to know? So how are we thinking through all of those various levels? Because a lot of PD and resistance to it is an identity issue or a cultural issue within a district. whether it's teachers' identity of we've always done it this way and we're not willing to move, or my personal biases as a leader that I bring into, or even the community's biases around some of the things that we're trying to do. So when you're planning that PD, how are you thinking about all the various stakeholders who might be impacted, and then have to devise a separate or intuitive plan that's flexible, knowing who all of those stakeholders are and what their perceptions might be?
Awesome. Well, I think that pretty much is going to conclude our time for today. You see that our next upcoming session is on April 13th. But before we let you take off, we would love to get your feedback on what you might like to discuss next time. So if you could jump back in the Google Doc, which Steve has posted the link in the chat to make it easy for you to find. If you could put some topics in there for us, that would be really helpful. And of course, if you're willing to share on a topic, that would be really great as well.
And it was just noticed that April 13th is our next date, but that is also PSAT testing date for 8th grade. So we might have to change that. We'll let you know, and we'll keep you in tuned on that one. Thank you for bringing that up in the chat.
I also think we were talking about, of course, we just kind of went through the calendar and put one on each month, but also knowing that spring break and things are going on. So we might, just combine our April and May dates. So just watch, we might either eliminate one of those dates or send you an update on when the next one will be.
And then if you want to give us feedback on this somewhere, you can even put it right underneath there of, did you like this format better? Do you like panelists sharing? Like, give us some feedback, because we're always willing to adapt and change things up depending on what your need is. Closing thoughts or arguments? Ahas? Matt, will you send us off with something funny?
Yeah, actually, so I didn't see Craig's video at first, his feed. He popped on and it caught me. Craig, I thought you were at a lake. And I mean, virtual backgrounds are like part of our existence. That's the first one I went, oh, Craig, look at you. I'm like, he's not at a lake, you idiot, but it's a really good one.
Nice work, Craig. Good job.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll make sure that this video gets out to you. If there's anything you might need or appreciate, give a holler.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.